Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc Colcer podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Colcer podcast. But yeah, man. So first off, I just wanted to say thank you for coming out here. I know it's a distance to get out here, so you had to come out here all the way from New York. So I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, man. Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I've been a fan for a while, so it's been a long time coming. I think we've been building for a while, so I'm very happy to be here.
And you and I have been talking about doing this podcast episode for a while. You actually, we met at NFT New York, and we had, I think, briefly chatted right before NFT New York, and I told you that I had interest in doing this podcast episode because for me, you hear a lot about projects at Rug, but you don't often hear about the D-Rug, right? And obviously, like, Tyler Robotics is probably the most, like, well-known D-Rug, right? Mm-hmm. But with that, I feel like we never really hear the story of like how all of that came to be, kind of what inspired you to want to D-Rug a project and everything like that. So you and I chatted about it back then, and then we ran into each other in NFT New York, and you're like, dude, you got to get back to me, Marc. And I still hadn't gotten back to you. I'm so bad at checking my DMs and everything like that. I need to do better. And so then we, I told you I'd reach out again. I totally blanked again. And then I want to say, I don't know, did you tweeted at me a few weeks ago?
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, like, oh man, my bad. And so at that point I said to you, you have full permission to dox my phone number. If I don't get back to you, sent you over my phone number, and we chatted after that, and then we made the podcast happen. So appreciate you having you out here. And so can you, for everybody who doesn't know who you are, can you just give a brief introduction to who you are?
Absolutely, man. So I'm SOK, dirtySOK, but everybody calls me SOK. I am the project lead at Balloonsville. I derugged the project back in February, and we're building a lot of cool stuff. I'm the founder of Helium, which we'll get into. I'm on the core team at Phase Protocol, which we'll also get into. And man, it's good to be here.
So you're busy as shit, is what you're saying.
I'm busy, man. I'm fucking busy. It's just I'm driven though, and I'm very passionate about what we're doing. Sometimes tired, but comes with the territory. But yeah.
Oh, hey, man, you're killing it. You're killing it. Okay, so before we get into today's episode, I do want to mention that today's episode is brought to you guys by Hey Wallet. So real quick, what we're going to be doing, if you guys are coming up with anything cool to promote the podcast episode, so if you're memeing us, if you're creating a thread, I actually want to see more people create threads. Like, there's going to be so much great information that comes from this podcast episode. So if you're doing anything with it to help promote the episode, like I said, bonus points for anybody who's making threads and things like that. Okay, I want to see more of that. We're going to be sending over Solana to people via Hey Wallet. So obviously we can't send Solana to everybody, but for people who really go above and beyond, create some cool content around it, create some cool threads and things like that, we're going to be sending over people Solana. So check out for that. It'll be on Twitter, and we'll be sending you Solana through Hey Wallet. And there's more information about that in the description of the video. But so before we get into Balloonsville and everything like that, I want to get more into who you are. So tell everyone a little bit more about yourself. What's your background? How did you get into all of this? What's your background with like life in general, and then how did you get into NFTs from there?
Sure, man. I think I'm first of all happy to be here. People here, a lot of people have been in the space for a while, know about Balloonsville, but kind of all they hear is like, oh, it was a rug. So it's nice to finally be able to show my face and kind of put a face and a name to the person who's leading the charge of derugging the project. So my background is actually funny enough. I went to school for accounting. I got my master's in accounting. I worked at a Big Four accounting firm for a couple of years. Got my CPA. Keep an active license, but I worked at a Big Four accounting firm for a couple of years. I literally hated my job. I hated what I did. And my now wife, my girlfriend at the time, I just came home like one night, like 10 p.m., like super late. And she's just like, you are miserable. Like, what would you like to do if you could be making money doing anything? And like, that was like a light bulb moment for me. And I was like, well, I've always been into photography. I've always been into videography. Like, let me just give it a try. So I saved up enough money. Living in New York, you need quite a bit if you're gonna like kind of like go off and do your own thing. But I quit. I took the leap, and that was about like 6 years ago. So I have a successful creative agency in the city. We do a lot of photo, video work, design work, digital marketing for restaurants, hotels, kind of the hospitality industry. Yeah.
Well, hey, I mean, I love that because, like we've talked about this before the podcast, but I've been doing photography myself for the last like 6 or 7 years. So I totally get that. So
yeah,
you're handling everything over in New York. I'm handling things over in LA.
Absolutely.
And then now we both gravitated over to the NFT world. So how did you get into NFTs from there?
Man, so we talked about it a little bit before we started rolling, but I bought my first Bitcoin in like 2015. I was in my last year of my master's program. And, I totally forgot about it. I was very interested in crypto at the time, but school, and then I started working, and I just like, kind of was a little bit of a fad, still had my Bitcoin. And I got back into it again with, through COVID, kind of when shit was pumping. Got into crypto, and then my buddy just like hit me up one day and was like, dude, you have to check out Solana. Like it was first an introduction to the blockchain. And I was just like mind blown at the differences between Solana and ETH. And then it led literally the next week. He's like, yo, go on Solana.io, come check out these NFTs. And I'm like, what is an NFT? Like it was really like, I started at like this level. From the beginning, and I just immediately, like my personality, got addicted to trading and just being in the space. And like the more I learned, the more I kind of got involved in communities. I mean, dude, like everybody got rugged at least once.
Oh yeah.
I am not. I am one of those people, right? So it's a lot of learning in the very beginning. Luckily, I was like, for Solana NFTs, I was on the earlier side. And it wasn't until Boryoku Dragons when I really like, they minted, and I kind of found a home and like a community that was knowledgeable, and I like learned a lot about the space. And kind of the rest was history from there.
So how did you go from like getting into NFTs? Because I think for a lot of people, it's like trying to figure out what their path is within the space, right? Like, Are they somebody who just buys and sells? Are they somebody who eventually wants to work for a project, found a project, be a community manager for a project, run, a product-based thing, not even a project, but just something that's more on the product side of things, like Hey Wallet or Hello Moon or something like that, right? So how did you go from just dude getting into Solana NFTs to now getting involved with Balloonsville?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So it really stemmed from what I do, right? So I run a creative agency. I shoot, I do video. I work from home a lot, right? If I'm not out shooting, I'm at my computer. So I really got into the space like deeply. And there was just one day I remember, like I kept seeing people in the Dragons community like going off, starting their own projects, like getting jobs in the space. And I was like, I'm at my desk, like I might as well give it a shot. And like I was, I had a very strong group of friends in the community. I was pretty well respected. Like I was, one of the degen traders, right? So the opportunity came around that somebody came into the Dragons Discord. It was like a new holder, and they're like, there's this project that's launching, and we're looking for like a head mod. Like we need somebody to join and like help find some other mods. And it was Balloonsville. It was like the first project I ever like thought that I was like, okay, I am.
And was this the rugger that was talking at the time?
Fast forward, okay. Apparently it was.
Okay.
Yes.
What did you know him as, by the way, name wise?
Pop.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, go back to it. I just want to know where we're at with that.
Yeah. So at that point, like somebody had come in, not Pop, bought a dragon, was like, hey, I have a friend who's starting this project, and we need a mod. And like at the time, Dragons was like one of the most respected communities. I think we had probably the highest floor price at the time. And, you know, I was like, well, like I'm down to give it a shot. So we connected and like I met Pop and, you know, he told me literally everything about the project. It was like, you know, the original roadmap was very well thought out. It was good art. It was like there were very few signs that it could have been a rug. So, and one other thing I'd like to add is that like I had asked them to dox to me to basically, because this was the first time I was putting my name behind anything. Like I wasn't just like a random dude. I wasn't like just some guy. Like I was putting my name behind it and going to promote it and help get the other dragons like into the server and get them whitelist, get them a free mint, whatever it might be. So, well, only whitelist. There was no freebies, but, so we connected from there. And, to be honest, it was like a very good idea for a project and I really enjoyed the art. They doxed to me and, the other mods that I had found, through like FaceTime videos. And I'm not sure if you remember, they also had like YouTube videos as part of their like marketing strategy with their faces. Later we found out it wasn't them, it was some paid actors. And those were the same people who had sent us, you know, FaceTime videos. So that's how I got hired into Balloonsville. I got hired as head mod and then later before Mint promoted to like admin. There's a bit more to that story, but it's like, I guess I could dive in a little bit deeper. They basically like promoted me to admin without me asking. That was like one of the first signs that I was like, this is a little weird. Like, you know, it was kind of unclear how things were being run.
So what were you doing at the time for the project? Like what was were you working on it full time? Were you being paid?
Yeah.
I guess like whatever information you want to give. And,
oh, for sure.
And the way for everybody who's watching this, the way I want to format this is talking about from your experience, what was Balloonsville like from the beginning to when it actually rugged, and then what the takeover process was like, and then you know, and then how things have gone since then. So
sure.
So going back into that, what were you doing? And then once again, was it full time or what were you doing at the time?
Yeah, so I mean, I was still doing running my creative agency, so it wasn't necessarily full time, but like through for my NFT time, it was full time. I was really focused on the first thing I did was hire like 4 other mods who were very well known. One was SMB, one was a Boogle, one was like people who aren't really mods, but like to help kind of promote the project. And that's when I realized that I actually had some good connections. Albeit it was like, you know, not for the best thing. Had some good connections and people kind of respected me. So I formed probably one of like the strongest like mod teams. There wasn't any other staff, so we were like kind of the staff. We were mods, we were the staff, we were running whitelist, we were pretty much doing everything. So,
and at the time, how much communication were you having with Pop?
Every day, like, you know, often there was never a sign that it was going to be a rug, up until like the day, like the moment like after Mint, like something very fishy happened that. You know, everybody knows now, but like everything but that was kind of communicated to us in the plans for the project. And that thing was that after the mint out, there was plans to put like, I think 1,000 SOL of the 5,000 SOL raise into a liquidity pool. And the day after the mint, he said, he made an announcement before like talking to any of us. He's like, oh, I'm putting 4,000 SOL into the liquidity pool. And like, there was a clear plan before. This is why like we all kind of got blindsided. There was like a very, like, this wasn't like just put this together and like, let me rug this. This was like a well thought out, the guy's smart. Like, I mean, he's a psychopath, but like, he's smart.
Yeah.
There was a well thought out roadmap. There was a well thought out plan. There was going to be a game. There was going to be like this Club Penguin style game. And you know, he had us all fooled, man. He had Magic Eden fooled. He had everybody fooled. So.
And so, okay, so going back into when you were talking to him, I know part of, and I'm trying to bring back my mind to like, cause this was back in, let's go through the timeline. This was February, right?
Yeah. The mint was February 5th, and we derugged, like he rugged the next day. I think it was the 6th. And we derugged, I think later that same day, like late that night.
The timing on all of this is so crazy because February was when I did the first episode with Frank. So it's like,
really?
Yeah. So like my life has drastically changed since February, and your life has drastically changed since February.
Oh my God.
But okay, so at the time, I know people were saying, and I think he said it, that he was like 16. Do you believe that to be true? Because that's always been something where some people will say I know for a fact he's 16. My whole belief back then was like, he was so witty that I was like, I don't believe and I don't know, you have to be like semi-smart to do what he did. And so I'm like, I just don't think a 16-year-old could pull that off and fool so many people. But maybe people were just too oblivious at the time. I don't know. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think he was actually 16?
I mean, he acted a lot older. I mean, I'm not going to speculate on like how old he was. He was smart.
What impression were you under on how old he was?
Like young, like 17, 18. Okay, like even because if you see the people in the video, they're that age. They look like they're in high school still.
Okay.
And I'm like, this is kind of bizarre that like this young of a person is starting this project, but I was like, this idea is so good. And like, I'm not one, like I'd been in the space long enough to know that like, you know, there was like 16, 17-year-olds who had dragons at the time, which was like mind blowing to me. And, you know, I wasn't one to judge, and like the idea was great. So, the age is like, you know, to be honest, who knows?
So, okay, so another question for you. Yeah. And the reason why I'm asking a lot of questions on this is because I do think this is a really interesting thing for a lot of people, because there's new projects that come out every day. And one of the things we're always trying to figure out is like, is this project going to rug, or is this something that I can believe in? Even like earlier before we started the podcast, we were talking about Dejan Town, and we were talking about Critters Cult. And I was saying how Critters Cult art reminds me a lot of Dejan Town, like a better version of Dejan Town, and how Dejan Town was one of the first like pixel projects that I've liked in a really long time. And so then when they rugged, I was really disappointed, because I was like, man, I think this project has a lot of potential with it. And so, and that's why I'm very excited for Critters Cult. We'll see if this ages well or not. Maybe this will be something 6 months from now. I'm like, what the fuck? Or it's one where I'm hoping Critters Cult is through the roof. So
I know, right? I got a couple critters too. I love the art, man. I'm like a big art person. We'll get into that a little bit later, but.
So we'll just both root for it to do extremely well.
We're rooting, man.
Yeah,
we're rooting.
But you know, one of the things is that there's so many projects all the time that come out and I think a lot of people get brought into these projects, and you know, when a project rugs, it doesn't mean that everybody that was involved with it was complicit, right? And so the reason why I wanted to ask so many questions about this is because I want people to kind of figure out what they need to do to help prevent some of these things moving forward, right? Yeah. I'm assuming that like after all of this has ended, that you've gone back and kind of gone through, okay, what would I have done differently moving forward, right? Yeah. So I guess for people who are watching, what would you have done differently for somebody else who may be coming into your shoes? Maybe they're being approached about being a community manager or something like that. Is there anything, questions that you would ask differently, or like things that you would do in order to kind of help prevent something like this from happening to somebody else?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, you know, we'll dive into phase protocol a little later, but we actually have built something where people don't need to worry as much, which is exciting. But if I was me, if I was going to give myself advice back in the day, like I, to be honest, I felt like I asked all the right questions. Some things I wish I had pushed harder. So, one of the things was like, I was attempting to get an ID back from him. So something happened after the mint and after the rug happened where, you know, Pop or whoever was on the Balloonsville account, and he had like doxed my ID. The reason why he had my ID was because I had sent him my ID with like some information scratched out. I wasn't just going to send him like, you know, my full on identification, with the hopes of him sending me back his. And this was before the mint. And, you know, he had some very good excuses, and you know, I wish I had dug a little bit deeper, but you know, being in the space, I had been in the space for at that time like 4 or 5 months. You know, it's not uncommon for founders not to be doxxed. Yeah. Not that would have done anything differently to me, but maybe I should have looked into some of the excuses a little bit more. I think really it's about asking questions and being good at understanding intentions, like do voice calls, like do video chats, like do things that you can really understand what their motives are with the project. Like we have a really good community manager for Balloonsville, and I know he's been asked to do other projects, and I feel like we've done a very good job at exactly this, and I hope people could learn is knowing what to look out for. And I know he turned down a couple projects because he was like, oh, they're whether they're going to rug or not, like they're just here to make some money. Like there's no passion or intention behind the project. So he's turned down some jobs. So like that to me, like teaching people and helping uplift them and making sure that they're successful in what they do is a lot of what has brought me to the space and has really kind of made like we've kind of built our project around that ethos. So I think that is what I would do, is just like ask questions and understand and don't just be kind of like a sheep and like trying to make some money. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's what more or less like I decided to do for my podcast, because I was like, okay, it takes effort. Like you flew out here from New York. That's a lot of effort to come out here, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was like, if somebody's willing to do that, and like I've had people like Hex who traveled out here from the UK, and I've had people who've come out here from Austria and all over, right? And so for me, it's like, it takes a lot of effort to go and do something like that. So the odds of somebody rugging at that point is very low. Yeah. And I would like to get to the point of, and part of this sounds like I'm saying this for selfish reasons, but I really don't look at it that way. But like, if projects came onto my podcast before they minted, then I think we'd have an opportunity to see how serious are some of these projects. And the way that I think we could format this, and it's been an idea that I've had for quite a long time, mm-hmm. is that the launch pads make a lot of money off of these projects, right? Yep. And they have obviously their their reasoning for why they charge what they charge and everything like that. My whole thing would be this: if a launch pad is going to accept a project onto their launch pad, what I would do if I was that launch pad is I would pay for them to fly out to LA and do this podcast. And the reason why I would do that is because I get it that not everybody who's founding a project already has money, right? Like some need the money from Mint in order to go do things, yada, yada, yada. I get that. Mm-hmm. But what I would do as the launch pad is have them come out here, and then now I'm getting to know that person. I'm meeting that person, whatever. Now it adds another layer to them actually doxing, because I think a big part of it was at the time Magic Eden was like, he did dox to us. And it's like, but what does that mean? Like if I show like
he didn't.
You're right. It's like, what is, doxing to me means you've met them in person, you've seen their ID, you've confirmed they are who they are, and like you've matched their, when you talk to them on the phone versus when you meet them in person, like they sound the same, like all of that. Like we need to go to the nth degree, because there's a lot of money that's involved with all 100%. Of this. And like with that, we need to make sure we're going an abundance of caution, because when a project does rug, it hurts the entire space. Okay. And so that's what I think we need to do. And I also think if a founder comes onto the podcast before Mint, it gives people an opportunity to hear from them, hear what they think of that founder. Is this somebody that I believe in? Is this somebody who I think is going to take this project to the promised land? Is this somebody who I think is going to put the right team around the whole project? Everything like that. And so that's what I think we need to do. I think right now, like our definition of doxing is like pretty shit. It's like, well, I know their name, and it's like, okay, like I could just make up a fake name, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's something that I think we need to do. We need to go deeper on, especially when it comes to these launch pads, because let's be honest, if you just keep launching rugs, like I don't know what the legality of that is, but you might have some lawsuits that come your way. That's probably not a good thing. You don't want that. Right. And then at the same time, like your reputation goes to shit if you keep launching rugs. Yeah. So I think for all launch pads, whoever it is, Magic Eden, whether it's, any of these launch pads out there, like, dude, go the nth degree, like talk to somebody like myself. It doesn't have to be me. It can be any podcast, but like somebody who's doing it in person, because to me, that's the only way you can truly dox, is doing it in person. Yeah. Anything other than that, it's like, you're still not to that like furthest degree that you should be. Yeah. So
I agree and disagree slightly. I think I agree with the fact that founders should come on and you should be able to speak with them. I think that's super important. Like understand their intentions in person. But the whole doxing thing, I think unless you're like famous or you have like a reputation in real life, doxing really doesn't do that much. Like it's very hard for someone like Magic Eden or any launch pad to pursue legal action after the fact, even if they have doxing material. It's just, doxing won't prevent a rug. It'll help, but it won't prevent it. So we understood that, and that's why we built Phase Protocol, which we could talk about once we get there, but is essentially a innovative and completely trustless and decentralized escrow protocol that interacts directly with minting contracts. And basically there's no manual like touch points. The funds go directly from mint into Phase and into their pre-built roadmap. So they kind of build out their roadmap. They into milestones, and those milestones have set monetary values. And this is public and locked before mint. And then after mint, the funds go directly and automatically into those pools and phases. And that's how a project will complete their roadmap, right? They have to complete these goals in order to unlock that money. And
which I really like that.
Yeah. And we could get into more details, but like we've really thought about everything, and we've talked to a lot of founders. Like, we're very well connected on the Phase team. And we've really thought about everything, and launch pads, of course. Like, we're in talks with a lot of them.
Yeah, and I totally get what you're saying there. Of like, it's impossible to prevent every rug, right? Like, and once again, if somebody doesn't give a shit about like, hey, you guys can know my name, it doesn't mean you're gonna actually be able to get like the feds on me and stuff like that. Right. I mean, hell, we had I don't know how to pronounce his name, but like Doquan or whatever, the Laguna dude, who's literally just tweeting. Like, he's got Interpol's looking for his ass, and he's just tweeting. Like, he was tweeting today like normal. It's like, dude, there's literally like people looking for you. I'll put the 2 tweets if I can find them, but I'll put them right here. But it was hilarious. Like, dude is just shit posting while he's like being sought after by the entire like world, basically. But yeah, I think in general, like, I guess like further doxing protocols, I guess, just helps lessen the odds that somebody's going to rug. Yep. Doesn't mean that we can ever like completely prevent it, but just helps us decrease the odds that somebody's going to rug. But sure. Okay, so going further into it. So then mint happens, and what was your experience like? And we'll move past this in a second, get into where Balloonsville's going, but like, what was that whole experience like? When did you realize it was a rug? And like, yeah, give me the next like few days. How did all of that go down?
Yeah. So I realized when he made the announcement, I don't remember how many hours it was before the rug. But I realized when he announced about the 4,000 SOL liquidity pool, I was like, this is not part of the plan. Something's up. And like deep down, like I wish I had said something sooner, but I wasn't, you don't know, right? Like I can't read his mind. And like everything up to that point was A-okay, and I was just like, if he said 4,000, that was like 80% of the mint funds was going into the liquidity pool. It ended up being, he said that to cover his ass, right? Because the next morning he withdrew 4,000 SOL and, ran off with the money. But that's kind of when I realized it. It's almost like that weird feeling where you're like, you're not sure if you're right or not. And like it could have been like pretty detrimental had I made that accusation beforehand. I wish I did now, but like at the time, it's like, how do you really know until it happens, right? So mint day was great because it minted out and like really quick, and I was like, this art's sick, and I'm so excited to like continue with this project. And then that night was when he made that announcement. I was like, this is something's off. I don't know what, I don't know why, but like something's off. And then he rugged like the next morning.
So, and what was that like? So when did you find out? Like, what was your reaction to that?
Yeah. So I found out, I think I was on the phone with like my buddy who actually got me into NFTs in the first place, back in August, who was like, yo, check out Solana Art. I was on the phone with him. We like would kick the shit every morning talking about NFTs and whatever, like what the market's doing. And, we're literally on the phone as the guy, his pop is tweeting. And he's like, yo, he just said that he's rugging. I forget what the tweet was exactly, but I was like, you're kidding. Like, there's no way. I was like out walking my dog in Central Park. And he's like, I was honestly like immediately, I don't even know what the feeling was. Like my stomach dropped because like everything, not to be dramatic, but like my NFT world like flashed before my eyes because I had put my name out on the line and I had like gotten all my friends excited about the project. And it was like the first time that I did it. And I felt like I was so careful about it. And like basically my worst nightmare had happened for working for this project. And, you know, it was like many hours of like what to do. I got a ton of like hate and like death threats and like hate messages and like everybody coming after me. Even like some of the people who I thought were my friends in the Dragons community were just like, you know, they came after me. And like, you know, all I could do at the time was like, I'm really sorry. Like, I put out this long message of basically from my point of view of what happened, basically saying and like saying that I had nothing to do with it, but I'll do everything in my power to make sure that this project is saved. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but like I felt deep down the second that happened, I was like, I need to make this right. That's just how I was raised. Like that's why I was so careful about like putting my name behind anything. Anything I do, I like to do it very well. And so I knew then that I wanted to save the project and save the community and save all my friends who had gotten into the project. I just didn't know how I was going to do it at the time. Like derugging a project is probably the hardest thing to do. You have to kind of be a crazy person to sign up. Like any derugger could tell you that. But yeah, it's definitely not for the money. It's like really it was for doing the right thing. And luckily, fast forward to later that afternoon, Chartfu Monkey hit me up, and we were kind of friendly from Boryoku Dragons community. He hit me up and he's like, hey, like we're thinking of derugging the project. Like we want to refund the treasury for Magic Eden, and we need you, we want you to be on board, right? Because you were kind of the next person who was at least a little well-known in the space. And I was like, what? I didn't even hesitate to stutter. I'm like, whatever you need, I'm there. Like, I want to make this right. If you need me to be an admin, you need me to be part of the core team, you need me to do whatever, I'm there. But even at that time, like I had not that much experience with running an NFT project. Came from like the degen side of things. So, you know, that evening Magic Eden made the announcement that they were derugging the project, like the infamous spaces. I think it was Tiffany, you know, they handled it well, in my opinion. And like, even to this day, like I'm extremely thankful for how they kind of refunded the treasury. We'll kind of dive into like their involvement.
Yeah. Let's dive into that. So, okay. So from, like, obviously we're sitting here in September, right? This was all in February. So they approach you, say, we're interested in having you stay on board and helping us derug this project.
Yeah.
From then till now, kind of like what has happened, what's been going on behind the scenes, like what has been, because I think that's the number one thing of like, I guess like we've never really seen a ton of like super successful derugs and things like that. So from that point, like what has all happened? What's been some of the frustrations that you've dealt with? What have been some of the fun things you've gone through? Like all of that good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Where to begin? So when you're derugging a project, I think I mentioned this earlier off air, you're like basically starting from negative, and you're starting from negative and expected to do things really quickly, especially with Balloonsville when it was like such a prolific rug, right? Pretty much all eyes. It was the first time we kind of saw ETH eyes on Solana NFTs, and massive pressure into like putting stuff out very quickly. I wasn't, I guess, exposed to that kind of pressure yet. Luckily, Chartfu was technically like the project lead. He had, you know, the keys to the treasury. He was pretty much running things and communicating with Magic Eden to make sure that we're doing things as they see fit. But yeah, it was like basically starting from negative, and we kind of took the old ruggers. We took like the original roadmap, and we're like, all right, what makes sense still? What doesn't? The community's like, we need stuff now. So like the first couple of weeks were like extremely hectic, and we came up with like a very initial roadmap pretty quickly. But you know, we didn't have, when you're derugging a project, especially at that caliber of attention, you don't have like the months of planning that goes into a normal project. You don't have the months of like preparation and marketing. Not that we needed marketing at the time, but like the months of preparation into development work, right? Like staking platforms, just anything that you need for an NFT project. So that part was hard, and we did the best we could at the time. I was on the core team, but I was not in charge. So I did what was asked. I helped with advising. I helped with coming up with the roadmap. It was really Chart Fu and I, and then we brought on Omega, who's still on the core team with me, who's fantastic. I definitely wouldn't be here without him right now. But we brought him on, and I'm not gonna lie, like the beginning couple months were like super rough. I think we were expecting more attention from Magic Eden in terms of like advisement. And Chart Fu is like, I love him to death, but he's like very busy. He's a very busy guy. He's like, anybody who knows him, he's working like 20, 21 hours a day. Like the man doesn't sleep for Magic Eden, as he should, right? So I think in the early days, a lot of the community was very upset with kind of how the project was proceeding. Things weren't really getting done quickly. People weren't being paid on time. Like basic kind of functions of a business or company or project weren't happening. And I felt like my hands were tied because I didn't have access to any of that stuff, mainly like the wallet, right? I couldn't pay the devs who needed a down payment to get started on the staking website. I couldn't do a lot of these things. So during that time, we launched our balloon homes. That was part of the original roadmap. So basically the original idea of Balloonsville was to make a gamified ecosystem through staking, a very fun ecosystem, kind of taking elements from Mindfolk, if you remember, like a lot of what they did. So we came out with balloon homes, which would act as like a staking multiplier. We launched our token Air, and we launched balloon homes. It was like a super messy launch. I honestly hate to think about it. But like the structure that we started with the tokenomics still is holding strong. So that part I'm very happy with. Fast forward after balloon homes, we eventually launched our liquidity pool. We put about 300,000 USDC into the LP, which was partially due to the promise of the original Rugger. The community was kind of expecting that, and Magic Eden wanted to kind of hold true to that aspect of things. We could talk about that a little bit more, but I would not recommend launching a token with an LP of that size to any project who's thinking about it without a concrete utility or purpose. Even then, I would definitely suggest thinking twice about it.
And I think that is the new meta. I feel like now projects don't really do a liquidity pool.
Yeah.
I think obviously DGods is probably the most like prominent, project that hasn't put out a liquidity pool with their tokenomics. But so okay, go back into that.
Yeah. So the like if it was up to me, like we would have done things differently, a little bit more aligned with like the DGods method. But everything we've done since then and continued to do is meant to support Air. Like we haven't given up on it at all. And I'll get into a little bit more of those details. Oh, excuse me. Get into a little bit more of those details with Helium, our umbrella company we're launching. But so just back to the homes, we launched the homes. We launched our token. We launched our LP. We upgraded our staking platform to a home rental market, so you could actually use the homes in the staking platform. You could rent out. You could fit 5 balloons in a balloon home. Any balloon that's in a balloon home gets a staking multiplier. You get more Air per day. We started a rental market, which was not easy. We kind of like tweak that a bit. Like the dev side of things has never been super fluid, but we've definitely been doing new things that hasn't been done. Like everything is kind of custom code. We've been working with Mecha Lab to do a lot of that stuff. We're not like using, like open source code from GitHub or anything. after the very rocky start of the LP, which was delayed like many days, the balloon homes, and like I felt so bad at that point at working on the team, and like I've been in like the holder's shoes before, right? So like I have that inherent knowledge of like how they're feeling, and like I'm in the chats like basically trying to like, you know, calm the nerves, and like we were working so hard, but like a lot of it was out of my hands. And so basically what had happened at that point, and like there was like a big uproar from the community, was that like, you know, the path forward kind of needs to change. And I'm about to skip a part, but a very important part is that we were approached early on by Vibing Studios, that Bustos owns. They do Bitmon, they do some of these other games, and they wanted to like join forces. At first, they wanted to buy the project. They wanted to buy Balloonsville and turn it into a play-to-earn game. And we were just like, no, like we're not doing that. And then they're like, well, let's join forces and we could help you run it and turn it into a play-to-earn game. And, you know, I wasn't always on board with that idea from the beginning, but the rest of the team was kind of like, let's at least put it to a community vote. And exactly what I expected. Everybody hated the idea. It was basically like put all of the treasury money into building this game that might be a hit, it might not, and like, you know, not do any of our original plan. So the community, like, that was the first time I saw the community really rally and like basically start giving concrete suggestions of what they wanted. I think at that point, when you have that type of interest and people who care tremendously about the future of the project, was like a very strong pivoting point for us. So that proposal failed. We weren't going to move forward with that. And at that time, there was an uproar from the community that like things are not moving along. They're not going according to plan, where the floor price is dropping, the price of air is dropping. So we spoke internally, and Chartfu was like, you know, I just don't have time to do this. And like, understandably, he just didn't have the time because he's, you know, one of the core people at Magic Eden. So we got together. I was actually in LA that weekend, and we had like a very long conversation. It was like, SOK, do you want to like take over? Do you want to be the project lead? Because everyone in the community knew I cared a lot. Like ever since the beginning, I was always fighting for them in the chats. I was like, look, I literally can't do anything, but like, I understand what you're saying. So they were totally on board with kind of me taking over, having the keys, and basically turning this into my own thing.
Yeah.
And that was only in May, I want to say. So that was about halfway through. And since then, to be honest, and not to sound cocky at all, like the entire project has turned around. Like ever since I was able to like work efficiently, have access to the funds, do things. We formed a council with the community. We had elections. We have a DAO council. We call it the Loon Council. We did that like the same week that I took over. So myself, Omega, and them all together, we kind of like really planned the project and how we were going to move forward. That was like a very strong turning point for us. Like our floor price didn't reflect it at the time. The air price didn't reflect it at the time, but like, you know, that was a very strong turning point for us. And since then, like a lot has happened that I've wanted to happen. Like I've been able to put like my own stamp on. I guess I'll continue into going.
No. I'll go from there. I mean, I think
Okay.
I think some of the things that people have to think about when it comes to all of this is like, when you were going into it with like, this is my role for the project, right? Yeah. Like if all of a sudden I rug the Marc Colcer podcast, right? And all of a sudden you had to, you know, take over and do my job and edit the podcast and put it out, it would take you a long while to figure out like how to do it exactly the way I do it, right?
Exactly.
So it's something that I think people like have to keep in mind when it comes to like derugging a project is, it's, you know, because I'm putting myself in, as I'm listening to this, into your position, and I'm like, okay, so you go into this project, you have this like given role, and then all of a sudden project rugs, and you're sitting there just as much as like people who are holders, and you're sitting there and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And like, so first it's like figuring out what the fuck is going on. Then you've got Magic Eden who's sitting there like, yo, listen, we like want to derug this because we're going to get murdered by people if we don't derug this. But at the same time, if we bring you in and make you the like project leader now or founder or whatever we want to call it, and you rug again, like, my God, it would be the most catastrophic PR nightmare that they could go through. And so 100%. From their end of things, it's like, okay, they have to like take some time before they can give you over the keys, right? And so they're being careful on like covering their ass. At the same time, like, you're trying to do things and you want to stick to the original roadmap because like that's what people are expecting. But at the same time, like, just because it was the original roadmap doesn't mean that you think it's a great idea or the rest of the new team thinks it's a good idea. So then you're sitting there with that like moral dilemma of like, yo, we told them we're going to do this, but should we do that? Like, maybe we should do this. And so you're sitting there like trying to bring all of that together. At the same time, you have like real world shit of like, you're probably sitting there talking to your wife like, hey, so this project that I was like planning on doing this with, like, maybe I thought it was going to take like 20 hours a week out of my schedule. Now it's going to take 65 to 70 because I got to go and do this. And you got to explain to her what the fuck a rug is. And she's probably sitting there like, what the hell is going on? And like, I think that's the thing that like people have to keep in mind is that like, dude, yeah, that takes a minute to like figure out. So, okay, so let's go back into that. So, you know, May comes along and like now you finally have essentially like the keys to kind of run this and like and start making more decisions and actually put action items moving forward. And so I had the decision keys at the time. They still, like you said, they wanted to be extra cautious. So the way it worked was that they would send kind of increments of like 500 SOL to a wallet that I controlled with the new team. And made sure that like we did shit with that money before they sent more. Like, they didn't send the whole treasury at once, which I understand. Right. Like, they're covering their ass. Like, they know me. Like, I had doxed to them in person. Like, I'd been to the Magic Eden parties. Like, you know, we got along well. But like that part I totally understand. Yeah. So, okay. So then so basically now getting into like June, now you have the ability to make more decisions and things like that. How did you put together the team that was like now involved with the day-to-day with Balloonsville? Yeah, it was a slow process, right? Like I think I mentioned this off air. Like we got the 5,000 SOL from Magic Eden refunded to the treasury. Like, now that's not that much SOL, but like at the time it was, you know, it's still a decent amount of SOL. I always operated as if we were broke. I was very smart with how we allocated money. I didn't want to make a team too big until we had a clear direction forward. So I had myself, we had Omega who ran like operations, Alpha, he does like partnerships, staff, and myself were kind of the two balloon bosses, as we call them, left. And Chart Fu was there still advising when we needed him, but like, you know, he's a busy guy. Yeah. So we had the Loon Council, which was like people from the community that really cared about the project. We had our community manager, we had a couple mods, and that was pretty much it. And one of our first council meetings is like, guys, like we had a couple items on the roadmap at the time. We had engine workshop, which was basically turning your balloon homes, adding an engine to them so they can travel. Because Balloonsville is like this town in the Loonverse, and there's these different destinations. You could take your balloon home, which would turn into an airship, and travel around to different destinations and kind of do like these adventures or missions, like kind of Famous Fox. That was the initial idea. And then we also had breeding we wanted to do in our own way, and we also had mutations that we wanted to do in our own way. And this was like, that was the plans when I took over, right? And I'm like, yeah, this sounds cool. Like, we want to do this, but like, how do we do it like in my way? Like I said, like, I'm a creative director. I'm a photographer, a videographer. I run a successful creative agency in New York. And like, I want to put my spin on these things. And so when we first got together, we're like, what can we do quickly? But well, and we had landed on Rascals, which is the hat that I'm wearing. So we had decided that we're going to make
a next generation breeding system within a month and create Gen 2 artwork for Rascals, which would turn out to be the badass, mischievous kids of Balloonsville. And we had a very ambitious goal as soon as I took over. And we delivered, I think, the first week of June. So we worked all of May, delivered the first week of June. We dropped Rascals. The art was better than the original art, which actually I do want to talk about. We're still working with the same artist from the original rug, Crayon, who I love. We got in contact with him like day one. You could hear the sadness in his voice. It was like the first NFT project he did. And like, as a creative, I felt him. He's like, I poured my soul into this. He's from the Philippines. And like, this was like his life. And we're like, and he also got rugged. He actually didn't get paid like all the money he was promised.
Damn.
Yeah. So, that was one of the first things that I set up to do was put a vote to the community and, basically, ask them, like, tell them the story of how he didn't make all the money he was supposed to make. And I presented an option. I'm like, look, should we give him a lump sum? Like, I want to make him whole. Like, we have money. Like, let's make it right, because I want to work with Crayon for the rest of forever. Like, I saw the talent in him in the beginning and the drive and the passion. I'm like, I need him with us. So we put it to a vote. They like whether a lump sum or royalties. The community decided on a lump sum, and then we decided on amount. They ended up choosing like the highest amount that we presented. So we've always been big into art and artists. Like, that's just me. Like, we talked about this a little bit. Like, I appreciate that. So I got to work with him in creating the Rascals, and it was like the first time that I was able to kind of put my spin on things. Like, they were cool, they were like mischievous, they were badass. That we built in like some really funny utility, that they like steal air from homeless balloons. You could stake them in a house with like a full family and get a staking multiplier. But like everything around the Rascals had to do with air. The utility around like increased air emissions, like making more air through the staking platform in a fun way, mind you. Like, stealing from homeless, you were able to. We implemented like a withdrawal tax. You were able to steal like air from the withdrawal from the bank,
and just stealing from homeless balloons. Just to clarify, people.
Yes, sorry, like stealing from homeless balloons, but like it's funny. It sounds funny, but the real reason behind it is that once we started doing that, people started putting their balloons in homes, which drove the value of homes up. So we were killing two birds with one stone. Is like what we did with Rascals is we wanted to provide more value to active community members. So if you breed, Rascals earn like maybe 3 or 4 times more than a normal balloon. Like, we wanted to kind of flip the breeding narrative around. Like, I wanted to make the supply very low. There's only 1,500 Rascals. There's 5,000 balloons. I wanted to make the supply low, make them valuable. This is something you can literally create with air, right? So I wanted to make them valuable on secondary. I wanted to make it work with our ecosystem. And by like doing the stealing from homeless balloons is like, it drove the demand to put your balloon inside a home. And if you didn't, you're not active in the platform, you were not making as much air. And that air was going to, we didn't increase emissions that much because of that. We really like redistributed, right? So the inherent goal of that worked out really well. The breeding's still going on. There's about like 500 or so Rascals left to be bred. Just because it's like a long process. One of the things I forgot to mention is that we did a free airdrop of something called rubbers, which is like balloon condoms. But it works a little bit differently, whereas like you need a male balloon, a female balloon, and your rubber and some air. So you fill the female and the male fill this new rubber, this new empty deflated balloon with air, and it forms a new life. It takes 21 days. It takes, it's all within our same staking platform. So, that process has been going really well. Like, their floor price is held above our normal balloons. are adult balloons, and people really like the art. It was the first time we added like a little bit more detail into the clothing, like some shading. Because if you look at the original balloons, it's like super 2D. It's like lines and colors, like that's it, and minimal lines. So yeah, that was Rascals. That was very successful. It was the first thing we did, and that kind of helped create like a sustainable ecosystem for air within our project, which I think is really important. Like it's one of the things we don't talk about that often. It's often overlooked, but we have like a sustainable in economy ecosystem for air, for breeding, for homes, and it's all on the same platform, and it's very well done. In my opinion, it's got some tweaks. I know I'm going to catch some flack from the community when they're watching this. They're like, "What about this bug? What about this bug?" It's got some bugs, but like inherently, it's all custom, right? So like, there's going to be things that need to be worked out.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. When you're doing any of this stuff that's like never been done before, or doing it in your own unique way, or working with devs on something that maybe they've never done something like this before, but it's whatever. It takes a second to get it all figured out, but it does seem like right now that you guys have the tokenomics figured out, where there's a use for air, and there's a way to create it. There's a way to get recycle the supply and everything like that. That hat is fire. Like thanks, so is that out? Like, can community members had the opportunity to get that?
Some of them have. I made like a small batch for NFT NYC. I made some shirts. We got some hoodies. But we kind of gave away. I gave away a lot in person, and then we did some raffles. We have like a very cool. It's called the Air Market. We have obviously a raffle platform and an auction platform that's supported by Air. We've done a few raffles for like the remaining stuff, but we're going to do another batch.
Dude,
I'm going to make sure you get one.
Yeah, do it. Well, no. Don't send me one because I don't wear hats. They don't fit my head. I would if I could, but they just don't fit my head. I look like an idiot when I wear a hat. But with that said, you should put that on a hoodie. Like a black hoodie, have that embroidered right in the middle there. And then even I would have another version that doesn't have the balloon and just has Rascals, because I think that looks fucking dope. And my big belief when it comes to merch is that merch is one of the easiest ways to onboard somebody from that's not into NFTs. If you're just rocking something super dope, like even like I showed you before we got started here, the shoes that Dreamo created for me, and I'll put a photo of those here so people can see them. But when he first approached me about creating those, he said to me, he's like, dude, I want to take your dead god and like I want to make the shoes red, and like I want the hell background to be on the shoes. And I said to him, I was like, dude, here's my thing. I don't wear super loud clothes, right? So if you give me like red shoes, there's only so many times I can wear something like that because that's super, super loud, right? And I was like, now if you make it super clean, simple things like that, like the DGOD logo, stuff like that, I can rock that all the time. I can wear those 5 days of the week, right? And so I was like, I'd rather do it that way rather than like shoes that I just never wear because they're like so loud that it doesn't really fit my vibe, right? But so now I know I'll have people that'll come up to me. I literally just got them, but like as I start rocking them, I know there's gonna be people who come up to me and go, dude, like what are those? And then that creates the conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like that hat I know is gonna cause people to be like, dude, is that like a streetwear brand in New York? Like what is that?
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day I wear it, I get that.
Yeah, and that's something where I even think like there's gonna be a project that finds a way to market in Web 2 and says like, hey, we want people rocking our shit regardless of even if you know about the NFT project. Like we'll find a way to like get you into it, but like let's start off with like if somebody just wants to rock that, like let them rock it. And so I would, dude, those like hoodies, I would make it available where people can either buy it in like a shit ton of air and just help decrease the circulating supply of air, or do it where people can buy it in Solana or USD or whatever. But like, dude, dumb fire.
Appreciate
dumb
it.
fire.
So this was I appreciate you saying that. So this is like the first thing that I put my touch on in terms of like creative direction. I helped creatively direct all of the art, the logo, the branding. Like I came up with all of that from scratch, and it's nice to see the appreciation. We definitely have a hoodie, a black hoodie with the logo on it. We got some shirts, they're dope, and we designed a bunch of merch for the core collection, Balloonsville. Some funny stuff is like I think it says like fuck a rug on the back. We haven't released any of it yet, just because there's a lot of things that we've been doing internally, and then which we'll talk about with Helium and Phase Protocol. It's been like a ton of business development like the last few months. As soon as Rascals ended, we like hit the ground running with business development. But yes, like we have some good friends over at the Greeks. I don't know if you know them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Godly Spree. He's the homie.
Yep. We had a phone call a few weeks ago.
Yeah. He's, we're going to have that'll probably be actually announced by the time this podcast comes out, but we have a partnership with them through Helium, for like merch support. So, we're good with merch designs, and I think it's really hard. Like you can't just like throw a logo on some stuff. Like if the logo's good, you can, but like you really there should be like some graphic designs on the back or something like cool, right? To match the project. So,
we should talk offline about that too, because I definitely have some, like, one of the benefits that I have as doing these podcasts is that pretty much every project that comes on either like brings me merch or like eventually sends me merch or whatever.
Yeah.
So I've seen projects where I'm like, I absolutely love this merch, and I've seen some where I'm like, this can be improved upon, whatever. And I have conversations with people off the podcast about that. But you should definitely send me over, because like I can, I think one of the things that like D-Gods did really, really well is like the quality of the hoodie is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. And then even like Embroidery Boy, who sent me over the Utes hoodie, which I'll put that here so people can see that, like that, the quality of that hoodie, and he's not like, that's not even like an official hoodie, but it's like, it's so dope, and like I love rocking that because it's super comfy. But okay, so merch aside, everything like that, so let's get into more of like the nitty gritty of what you guys have coming up next. So talk to me about Helium, talk to me about Phase, like talk to me about all these different things that you have going on right now. So what can people be excited about, like what's coming? I know you've got the art upgrade, so let's start talking about all of these. You tell me the order of like what's the easiest to talk about, but like let's nail down each one of them.
Yeah, for sure. We could talk about the Ascension, then Helium, and then I definitely want to touch on Phase there at the end.
Perfect. So let's go through the Ascension.
Okay, cool. So after, literally as soon as Rascals ended, we hit the ground running with business development. Actually, maybe we should do Helium first.
That's fine.
Yeah, let's do Helium first. All right. So after Rascals, we hit the ground running with business development, right? I think this was around the time where some stuff about y'all was coming out, like the royalties discussions, like, royalties might be going to zero and this and that. And like, I'm not going to get super passionate about it right now, but I am very passionate about royalties. It's one of the reasons why I joined the space as a creator. I have some one-of-one photography on exchange art. I did like way back in the early days. I think like the concept of NFTs only makes sense because there's royalties and there's ways to track that fee back to creators. So where was I? Oh, business development. So after Rascals, we hit the ground running with business development. We hired Seb, who's a fantastic guy from CrowdSurf. He works on a couple other projects, but we hired him first part-time, and just to make sure that everything kind of worked out, that, kind of the things meshed. He was a holder from the beginning. That's one of the things we care deeply about, and our ethos is like uplifting the community, promoting from within. Everybody who works on our team started as a holder. Everybody who's an alpha caller started as a holder. Everyone who's a mod started as a holder, and like helping them kind of reach their own heights, right? So we kind of brought Seb on part-time. He really helped with business development, partnerships, like getting in touch with other projects. And it really like helped me mentally like change my, the way I thought about things. And I think the yaw thing was good in that regard, is like, making people think about, their project as a business. Like I had always thought about it, but like it was just a little kick in the ass. Right. Because I knew from early on that like, our floor price was floating between like 1 and 3 or 1 and 4. And like, we weren't making much money on royalties. Like I knew as a business person, like having accounting experience, running my own creative agency, like that's not a sustainable revenue source. Right. So after we knocked out Rascals really quick, it was like, okay, what can we do to make this into a sustainable business, a revenue generating business? And how can we do it where we could kind of help flip the narrative in the way, because we were still, even at that time with Rascals, like I think it was really overlooked, and it only kind of drove me more to like push harder and deliver and be more passionate. I think it was really overlooked because, everybody was like, oh, Balloonsville, it's like a rug, right? Like that's just a D rug. Everybody looks past D rugs, and it's like, why are you derugging? And we could go on and on about that. But it really like, it made me so passionate into like turning this into a successful project. And everything is like finally culminating together. And, at first I thought about, okay, let's turn Balloonsville. Sorry, let me restart that. I was thinking of a way where we could kind of detach the rug stigma from us in a way that would be, that we could kind of support our past and our origin and where we came from, but like kind of form a new identity for me, for the new team, and like everybody behind, this new future, right? So we decided to come up with an umbrella company that called Helium, that Balloonsville would live under. Okay, so it no longer becomes like we're Balloonsville, the rug project, the derug project. We as a team are Helium, and derugging Balloonsville is just one thing that we've done. So it kind of opens the door for us. That initial decision opened the door for us to do a lot more than what we were limited to do with just the Balloonsville roadmap, right? So Helium is our umbrella company. It's meant to be like a Web3 driven business that has a few pillars. But the important thing, and I've spoken about this a little bit, is our ethos, and it's like the reason why we're kind of working on this, and it's to like uplift the ecosystem. Everything we do through Helium and all the services we provide, which I'll get into, is meant to support the ecosystem, uplift the ecosystem, do something positive for the ecosystem as a whole. And while doing that, provide value and support to Balloonsville, our original community. So our first and main thing with Helium is a creative studio or creative incubator, or both. So what we're going to be offering, and it ties back to my real life experience and expertise of running a creative agency in New York, is we have a roster of 8 artists. We have 2 web designers. We have 2 animators. We have a very large team of people who can create, and these are people who might not be as well known. We obviously have Crayon, one of our artists, but we've gone around and spent many months kind of finding other artists that have their own style, that don't overlap with each other, so we could kind of provide services to anybody who might need them, whether that's, one, creative direction. We're going to do collection generation. We're going to do art upgrades. We're going to do entire brand identities. We're going to do brand decks. We're going to do web design. We're going to do literally anything you can think of that a project might need in terms of creative services, we're going to provide. And the reason why I'm so confident in this is because I do it professionally in real life. And I think, when you hear it, it might not sound as unique of an idea, right? It's not like bringing a Web3 creative agency is not super innovative, but it's the way we're going to go about handling things, right? And running a successful business and bringing that level of professionalism, communication, working with artists, working with the clients, like pricing negotiations, like all of these things that these artists from around the world that might not have experience with, we're not only going to help them with, but we're going to help teach them about it. To really like help, like my goal is to like make these artists as successful as possible. And through my knowledge and like working with agencies and working with clients, and like, I'm very confident that we could do this successfully. We already have a ton of interest. For the few people who have kind of seen our ascended artwork, which we'll get into here shortly, have a bunch of interest in whether it's an art upgrade or a pre-mint project. But I think on that side of things, where we differentiate is that we are really going to be targeting like Web 2 companies and Web 2 people and help them onboard into the space. So it's not just going to be creative services. Of course, we're going to service projects that already exist in the space, whether it's a pre-mint or an art upgrade or anything like that, but we're going to service and market and attack Web 2 companies who have some sort of interest, and we're going to actively market through like, normal Web 2 avenues, right? So I think that's really important, and I'm really excited about that because we need to grow the space in a safe way. And I think that the creative touch point is very important in doing so. And we want to serve as like that initial touch point to somebody or a company that's looking to start an NFT project.
Yeah.
And whether we're we're sticking to our niche with a creative studio, but we've secured essentially a strategic partnership in every other avenue that we could kind of push clients to or help them with, right? Whether it's a dev team, whether it's the full vertical merch that I was talking about with the Greeks, Launchpad connections, all of these things, I think are extremely important. Like, so we can kind of focus in what we do best and still be able to provide kind of a full service offering in a sense, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's really smart. I think because there is a lot of people that are doing this kind of the whole like, I don't know how to describe that, like the creative agency essentially for Web3. Yep. But I think somebody who does a really good job of bringing in Web2 businesses will be able to capitalize on that. And I think even that could even mean like doing some work for some Web2 businesses where it's not even NFT work, if we're being honest. Like there's a lot of different like big companies in general that like take like somebody like Nike, right? Yep. Where you'll learn that they eventually like they're doing things for other businesses that aren't even like, they don't even seem like they're Nike related, but they are, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's and I'm just using Nike as a random example there, but like if you guys eventually did work for like, okay, like if we said at Roast Umber, like, hey, we want to do a new can design, right? And like you guys helped us create that. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be an NFT related thing for it to be beneficial to Helium. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really dope. The one thing I want to say, so if there's a brand called Sana in Detroit, where whoever gets them to eventually do an NFT project, I promise will make $1 trillion. So whether that's you or somebody else, I've been reaching out to them. I've never heard back.
Put us in touch.
I don't have a contact.
Okay.
So you got to go and make that happen.
We'll make it happen.
But there's a company called Sana, Sana, and I promise the moment they put out an NFT collection, it'll blow the fuck up because their art is incredible. I don't know who their artist is, but he's amazing, or she, whoever it is. But with that, okay, so let's get into Ascension for a second. So what is Ascension? Why did you guys decide to create Ascension, and all of that good stuff?
Yeah. So the Ascension is, it's got a very fun storyline, but without getting into too much of the lore, the Ascension is basically an art upgrade for the original Balloonsville collection. We're using it more of a way to showcase our capabilities at Helium. I think it makes a lot of sense for us to do it, and also to finally make this art our own, right? Because we essentially inherited it. So it's very important to me to be able to put my creative touch and creative direction on something that we can have forever, right? Like we're not, never say never, but like this is the art upgrade of all art upgrades for the balloons. And I think that people are honestly going to be blown off of their ass once they see, because like we're very unassuming. No one, a lot of people don't know what we're doing, right? Which is why we're doing this. And when they see the art, the amount of effort, like this has been months in the making. Like we wanted to do an art rework, was in the original game plan. It was in the original roadmap to do mutations. Mind you, we're not doing mutations, but I think when people see the art, they're going to really love it. And it's very PFPable. But the Ascension is essentially the balloons. We have a couple episodes and animations out. I think by the time this airs, we might have another one. We have these animations that basically tell the story of people going about their normal day in Balloonsville. This ominous cloud rolls into the city, into the town, and like there's this energy emanating. There's this lightning. There's all of this stuff that's happening, and all of a sudden you just see one balloon character, his head pop off his body and gets pulled up to this cloud. So the idea of the Ascension, and that continues to happen. The idea of the Ascension is that the balloons are reaching this higher level, this higher state. This higher level of stratosphere, right, where their entire being changes. We have different elements like nature, a little bit of mutant elements, but not really. Armor, like godly stuff. We have just some very cool elements to the art where once you go through this Ascension portal, you're going to come out the other side. You're not going to know what it's going to look like, but it is a 1-to-1 attribute change. Every attribute has been upgraded. The rarities will stay the same, but everything. I said this in a bunch of spaces, but like I'm the first one to admit I didn't make the original art. There are some ugly attributes, and like when I tell you that we've made none of them ugly, like I feel confident as someone who like is very wants to be sure of what he says at all times now. Like I'm very confident that people are going to agree, and everybody who we've shown, whether it be like potential clients for Helium now, have been like, damn, like we need that, right? And I think we're going to see a lot more projects that are needing art upgrades, and even like the Web 2 companies that I've been speaking with now, and they're like, this is really cool. We've already done samples. We're in like pretty far talks along with a lot of clients for Helium. So I'm excited to like kind of get that news out as it comes. Nothing is, I can't say anything just yet, but that will be announced pretty soon. So yeah, the Ascension, it'll cost air. It'll happen immediately. People have been waiting to hear about that. And everyone's going to love the art.
There we go.
But one thing we haven't talked about at all is everybody thinks that the Ascension is just an art upgrade. We don't ever do anything just for shits and giggles. Like we put our brain behind everything we do. The idea about the Ascension is to tie the new art, the Ascended balloons, into Helium. So Ascended balloons are essentially your ticket into everything we do at Helium. So we have a detailed list of utility that will come along with it. It's separate from the air. It's not like increased air emissions. We're doing everything for the Ascended balloons to really reap the benefits of what we're doing at Helium and like our umbrella company or revenue generating company, whether it's airdrops from clients that we work with, free mints, whitelist mints. We're going to be charging 10% of our services in air. Everything we kind of do is going to support air inherently through Helium. So even the rest of the collections with Balloonsville is going to kind of see the value in that and reap the benefits. But the way we wanted to structure it is that Ascended balloons will kind of tie into Helium, and then Rascals will continue to be like powerful air earners, right? So there'll be plenty to kind of earn on this side of things with Helium and balloons, and Rascals and air and like the Balloonsville ecosystem as a whole. That'll kind of be how we segment things without like cannibalizing any other of our collections. So I think that's really important when you're like doing some new things, especially for a project like us that has 4 collections. It's very important to do that. And I think that I'm missing an entire pillar of Helium, which is our venture side, which is our investment side of things. And that's kind of, if we have a little bit of time to talk about phase protocol. I'm going
to bring that all together all in a second here. Cool. We'll bring in phase. So yeah, what I want to do real quick is I'm going to put some different art. You showed me a little bit before we started the podcast. Yeah. But I'm going to put those in here so that people can kind of see. So we'll show what one looks like, what it's going to look like, and we'll do that for a few of them so that your community can see that. Sick. And but yeah, I think to wrap it up, I think let's talk about phase, and let's talk about what the point of phase is. And I know you talked a little bit about it when we were talking about the talking about doxing and things like that. Yep. So phase, explain kind of how phase fits in this whole ecosystem, and then we'll wrap it up from there.
For sure. So first I'll just mention that Helium Ventures is like our second branch of Helium, right? So we kind of built Helium to be an overarching brand. We have Helium Studios, and then we have Helium Ventures. So Helium Ventures is kind of our investment side of things, whether it's through actual financial investment or like active management and ownership. We're going to be like actively pursuing interests in not all projects or founders or teams, but projects and products that are meant to uplift the ecosystem, that are meant to give back to the ecosystem, provide some sort of security as relating to phase. But it's really important that like we're not going to be doing work for just anybody, right? So I think that leads me into Phase Protocol, because Phase Protocol is essentially our first piece of our Helium venture portfolio. So we, as a team of Helium, myself, Omega, and Seb, we have percentage ownership in Phase Protocol. We're rerouting that ownership, even though it's us as individuals. We're rerouting that ownership, our percent of the ownership, into Helium. So all of any money we make through that will go into Helium, and then it'll, everything we do through Helium is going to be, without, saying it blatantly, to bring value back to the ascended loons, I should say. But what Phase Protocol is a innovative, it's completely trustless, completely decentralized escrow protocol that's built, that's based on milestone completion. It interacts directly with minting contracts through launchpads or Candy Machine or however you see it, to basically secure the funds in an automatic process from the mint into the Phase vaults. And those vaults are basically set. They're preset by the team who's launching the project. They'll make their roadmap. They'll kind of set their milestones all in our Phase platform. It's very easy to use. We wanted to make it super sticky, but they basically set their milestones. I believe we have it set to at least 5, and the related monetary value with those milestones. That's kind of locked pre-mint. And then what happens is, once the mint happens and the funds get distributed automatically, those pools, those Phase pools get funded, and those funds are essentially locked until the team completes their project or completes those milestones, and they can mark it as complete. And then the community, it ties directly with the NFTs that come out of that Candy Machine. Each NFT is a vote. They'll have a very important distinction is we custom made a veto vote, a time-based veto vote. So when a project kind of puts a phase and mark it as complete, so let's say their first phase is staking, they put out their staking platform. They're like, hey, we did this. We're going to put it as complete. Like, you have basically, as a holder, you have a 3-day window to veto that completion. It's automatically yes, unless the holder says no. So we kind of built it to not prevent progress, more as kind of like a fail safe.
Yeah, I like that.
So if that doesn't get vetoed, the funds get distributed. I think one of the big things, and we've seen a couple escrow protocols like Vaultex and Communa 3 was doing one. I think they stopped. A couple of the things that are really different is that, this is completely trustless and decentralized. So you're not relying on a team or anybody or the launchpad to kind of manually send the funds into the escrow, which a lot of the competitors have, right? So who's to say that whoever touches those funds first isn't just going to run off with it? Like, this is a true, like, there is no security issues with the funds entering the platform, right? And people don't need to trust us as a team because we don't have access to it either. It's completely based on smart contracts, which have been audited. We're going to present that. And so there's that difference. And then there's immediate access to funds, which I think a lot of project founders need, right? So we have the ability built into the platform where you can swap between USD and Sol immediately. So I think we saw with Great Goats, or one of the projects that minted on Magic Eden, they had selected like a 7-day escrow, and Sol tanked like 30% during that 7 days. They lost 30% of their buying power. So like allowing teams to manage their treasuries in a smart fashion and securely, right? So those funds are still in escrow. They can't release them, but they could swap back and forth as often as they want. I think is really there's some major key differences, and we have some really cool partnerships with Phase locked in. And I think by the time this releases, we'll have announced at least a few of them. I'll have to message you if we need to cut like one of them out. But one of our partners that I want to talk about is Trust Labs. I think they're really making waves in the space. Dr. Solana, Spoonicus, they're good friends of Phase, and a lot of the core team members know them well. I know them, not as well, but I know how strongly they feel about kind of bringing security and safety to not only their project, but like the ecosystem as a whole. So they're going to kind of refer any Trust Lab projects, they're gonna push them into using Phase as they see fit. Another one is Ape16Z.
Oh, yeah, dope. I was just on a Twitter space with him last night.
Yeah. So you know about them. They're brand new launch pad. It's going to be like completely bespoke, like very, very selective. They're going to actually require everybody they launch to use Phase. So that's one of our strongest partnerships at the moment in terms of launch pads, which I think they're going to make some really big waves. There's another launch pad and marketplace that I'm not at liberty to say just yet. But we are in talks with pretty much every launch pad, whether that's, initial, close to closing or closed. The idea is that Phase protocol is permissionless. Anybody could use it, but we want to be integrated with, we're not trying to be a launch pad, right? We just want to provide the tool to keep the ecosystem safe, to stop liquidity loss, all of these things that are kind of really detrimental to our ecosystem right now. So, I'm super stoked with that. And like, that is just one part. This is our first part of Helium Ventures. This is one of our first like ownership partnerships. I think many more will come. And I'm very excited about like what Helium allows us to do as a team, as a company. It's really like, it makes me so passionate and like just excited that like we can finally be our own team, right? Like, I'm sure there'll be some people that are like, oh, it's Balloonsville, like the D-Ruggers of Balloonsville, but like, we're really going to make this a successful company. Like I have no doubt about it. This is my ticket to being in Web3 full time. Like, I want to take my real life business and turn it into this. And I want the Balloonsville community to reap the benefits, right? So
yeah, man. I got to say, I mean, like, what you guys are doing is really, really cool with everything with Helium, everything with Ascension, everything with Phase. Like, you guys are doing some really cool shit. So, and I can tell just from us chatting today, from you flying out here, from us getting coffee earlier and just chatting, like, how passionate you are about what you're doing. So, for somebody, let's say there's somebody watching this right now who's not a holder, or they're maybe they just bought in, or they're getting ready to buy in. Why should somebody be excited about the future of Balloonsville?
Well, I've always said that balloons always go up, right? So I think that Balloonsville, we're at this point that there's been months of kind of business development and artwork and literally so much work that's been going on behind the scenes. We're coming to this point where this is the perfect time to join our community. We have a very strong community. We have like a very sustainable ecosystem within our project, and now with the launch of Helium, I think with the success of that and the revenue generated from that, we're really going to turn this into like a blue chip project. I have no doubt about it. Or I'm going to die trying, man. So.
No, I love that. I can really tell how passionate you are, and that's something that I really look forward to was when I talk to somebody who's really, really passionate about it, because, I think that's what it takes to succeed in this space, is like wanting your project so badly to succeed that you're going to do whatever it takes to figure it out. Because Absolutely. I think, one of the things is that we always have an idea of like how something is going to be perceived when we put it out. And then I think with time we figure out, okay, actually I need to do this, or actually I need to do that. And I think that's part of the journey, is going through that. And so when somebody has that passion, then I'm willing to bet on them being able to figure it out, right? And so that was one of the reasons why I've always been so bullish on like Liberty Square, even when, the floor was a 1 or whatever, was because I was like, he's so passionate and his team is so passionate that I'm betting on them to figure it out, right? Yep. And so it's the same thing with like, I'm really bullish on you and really bullish on this project now, and I knew nothing before this about what you guys were doing, and so I'm really bullish on it because I can tell how much you give a shit. And so yeah, man, I just want to say shout outs to you and shout outs to the whole team for all the work that you guys have been doing. I know it hasn't been an easy journey, but for people who if they're not following you, where can people find you? Drop your socials.
Yeah, Twitter at dirtySOK, SOK. You could hop in the Balloonsville Discord and just find me. Go to any of our websites. My Twitter's linked there. Helium with a 3.io or balloonsville.xyz. You could kind of find anything you need to know about it. Like, I think by the time this podcast drops, we'll have our brand new website out and big marketing announcements and spaces pushes. So I'm excited, man. And I think this new art is really going to turn some heads, and it's finally going to be like my baby, you know.
There we go.
Yeah, so I'm stoked.
I'm excited for you. And you said
Appreciate it.
balloons only go up. I'm looking forward to seeing balloons go
Let's
up.
go, man.
I think I'm going to have to buy a few after this. Not financial advice, but I'm bullish. So, but yeah, man, I just want to say again, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you taking the trip out here. And I'm looking forward to the next phase of Balloonsville and seeing where you guys go from here. So
Absolutely, man. Baby, it's the Ascension, you know.
There we go. There we go. For everybody else, thank you again for tuning in. And we'll catch you guys soon. See you guys.
Appreciate it.